It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
So I would definitely say this is for anyone who's about to become a dad, whether it's for the first time or second, third, fourth, fifth time. You're going to be so much more supportive and so much better in that labour room if you read this book.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the founder of happyfamilies.com.au and Channel 9's parental guidance parenting expert and co-host. I'm here with Kylie today, my wife, mum to our 6 kids and parenting podcast partner. Normally every Wednesday we have a conversation with somebody who's, written a book or who's worthy of interviewing so that we can get our parenting right. But today, Kylie's joining me for a very rare Wednesday appearance. And we're reversing roles. Normally I'm the one asking the questions, but today it's Mrs. Happy Families asking me the questions because I've got a new book that's come out.
Well, I actually have a bone to pick with you because I was listening to one of the interviews the other week and you said that Wednesdays was your favourite day because you got to talk to very interesting people.
Did I really say that?
You did.
Oh, maybe I was just saying that to make them feel good about being on the podcast, being interviewed by me.
So you are suggesting by the very fact that you're sitting on the opposite side of the table today that you are a very interesting person.
Oh, gosh. Oh, boy. Well, I've written a book.
And clearly the other 4 days of the week that we talk is not a very interesting person.
And one of the highlights of my life is recording this podcast with you.
You're hilarious.
Am I digging deeper or am I getting myself out of this hole?
Well, I'm really excited about this today because when we first started podcasting together, interviews scared the bejeebies out of me.
The bejeebies.
The bejeebies. Right. But I'm really excited about today's conversation. So,
okay,
you've got this new book.
Yep, Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies. If you're going to Google it, now we've got the link to the book in the show notes. But if you're going to Google it, you need to make sure that you get the one that I've written because this is the second Australian edition. There's Dummies books, A Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies around the world. All kinds of editions are out there. So you need to make sure you get the one with my name on the cover. Otherwise, I don't know what you're going to read.
Are you ready to let go of the driver's seat?
Oh, sorry. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that the book is called Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies, second Australian edition.
I think they just need to look at Justin Coulson.
Dr. Justin Coulson. Okay.
There's lots of words, and I think for the time-poor parent, Justin Coulson is enough.
Okay. Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies, Justin Coulson, second Australian edition. Just wanted to be clear.
I'm really curious, though. How did you feel about being approached to do a Dummies book?
Am I a bit hard to interview?
You're painful.
I was shocked. I had no idea. So the Dummies books have been around for such a long time now. They literally came to me and said, we want to update the Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies.
Did you even know the book existed?
I didn't know that it existed.
Maybe you should have.
The first edition was put together by a couple of Kiwi guys and they used to have a dad's website that was out there and it was actually a pretty decent sort of content on their website and also pretty decent content in the book. But once they handed me the book and I looked at it, I was like, it does need a freshen. It does feel like it's a bit old and the world's moved on. But I was stoked. I mean, the Dummies brand is fantastic. I've never written a book specifically for dads and I've certainly never written anything for parenting at the very, very beginning stages. I mean, everything that I write is really for parents who have got kids that are 2 or 3 and above and are starting to drive their parents crazy. So it was really fun to look at the pregnancy and labour period, just after the baby's born kind of period, do some research and write some really cool stuff about that.
This process was obviously really different to your other books. I mean, you have created a concept all on your own and have written a book from start to finish, whereas this one you were reviewing somebody else's work and then putting your touch and feel to it. And I'm wondering how you found going through that process. Was it an enjoyable process for you?
Yes and no. So the workload's a lot smaller, a lot lower, because somebody's already done all the structuring, somebody's already put together all of the ideas, and now it's a case of saying, do these ideas belong? Should I chuck them out? What else could go in here? Every now and again, with the greatest respect to the guys that wrote the first edition, they didn't have a PhD in psychology. They didn't know the stuff that I know, and they also didn't have the benefit of an additional 15 or so years of psychological research to help us to be well informed on these things. So a couple of times I would read things and be like, oh, really? Oh, man, it needed a freshen up. It needed an update. But it was also frustrating because it kind of already had this structure. And with the time frames we were dealing with, I probably would have structured the whole book differently if I had time. But this is a revision and an update. It's not a brand new book. So within the confines of what I was writing, it was both good and bad. It was efficient, it was effective, and I got to do really great work. I think if I'd had more time, I probably would have done a more comprehensive review of it. But these are the restraints that we're dealing with, and I'm really happy with the outcome. I mean, I'm delighted with it.
So did you change much of the content and the feel of the book? And if so, would you consider that the book is now yours?
Yeah, I would say the book's 80% mine. It was a lot. It was kind of blokey, and it's still got that little bit of a blokey tinge to it, but not nearly like it was before. I feel like I've put in really important material to help dads to support their partner during not just pregnancy, but particularly during the labour process. That's something that the book was really, really light on, and I've beefed that up incredibly. And because it's 2022 and we've learnt so much about how relationships work in the last 15 or 20 years, I put a great big section in there about consent. Consent matters at every stage of a relationship, but every now and again there's this idea that once you're in a permanent relationship with somebody, that maybe consent isn't such a big deal. I wanted to really clearly state it is a big deal, especially postpartum, especially during pregnancy and after the labour. This is something that we really need to ensure that men understand.
So were there any specific personal experiences that you leaned into as you went through this process?
Well, we've been through this 6 times. We've had 6 healthy pregnancies and 5 natural births, 1 cesarean. And I leaned heavily on the experiences and the learnings that we've had and the people that we've talked to that have taught us really valuable stuff about how husbands and partners can be the most supportive possible over the person who's actually giving birth in the delivery room. That was what I leaned on so heavily. I'm gonna say something that's a bit provocative, a bit controversial, but I really believe it, and I don't say it with disrespect to those who are doing this work. What I will say, though, is that typically the birthing classes that occur in hospitals, the sort of semi-compulsory birthing classes that you get to go to prior to the birth of the baby, they're not valuable. They're not helpful. As a dad, they gave me absolutely nothing, literally nothing. I was useless as a result of what I learned there. But what I learned from books and from talking to people who were educators in this space, people who really know their stuff, changed the way that you and I had our birth experiences, the way that you went through labour and the way that I supported you. And I leaned heavily on that information and what the research around that emphasises so that new dads, whether it's the first baby or the 4th baby, so that they can be the very best support to their partner or wife that they can be. And I know that section of the book is going to be more valuable than anything else in the book. It's just so good.
So after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about this editing process that you've been through, but I'm actually really curious to know what you've learned as a dad and what you wish you'd known all the way back at the outset, and how that will hopefully flow on to your readers.
You've asked politely, you've asked again, you've patiently waited, you've even made a threat, but finally, you lose it. Listen to me, you shout. In the practical webinar, The Screaming Spiral, you'll learn the top reasons why your child isn't listening, and you'll get pro tips and strategies to get them to hear without yelling. Available on the Happy Families webshop now.
It's the Happy Families podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And we are discussing your brand new book,
Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies, 2nd Australian edition. Make sure that you follow the link in the show notes if you want to grab a copy for anyone that you know who's going to be having a baby soon. It's funny being in the interviewer's chair, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm much happier on the other side.
So what else do you want to know about how I wrote this book, hun?
Well, I'm interested to know, how did you decide what to keep and what not to keep? Because like you said, you're going through this process. It's not actually your book.
Yeah.
And you've got this structure in place. It isn't what you would have done. How did you decide what you got rid of?
There were some things that were really obvious. Like there was one section about how there is a very low percentage chance, like infinitesimally small chance, that women during labour will have an orgasm. I mean, there's documented cases of this happening, but it barely ever happens. It kind of felt like it was voyeuristic, it was sensationalistic, and it just didn't need to be in the book. It's not going to be helpful. It's not really relevant. It doesn't help anybody as they're going through the labour process, male or female.
I don't think I know any woman who's thinking about orgasming while she's giving birth.
No, and while I don't have detailed birth conversations with too many people. It's nothing that I've ever heard of before. So, I mean, if it happens, good luck to you. Well done. But I didn't think that it needed to be in the book. So there were things like that where I was like, well, actually, this is not all that relevant. There were also just things to update. There were things to tidy up, things that I wanted to move through. And all it really came down to is having been through this 6 times, having read lots of books, having had the experience that we've got, and having a PhD in psychology and working with families for 10, 15, 20 years now, there's just kind of this feel. As you write a book, you get a feel for what needs to be there and what doesn't, what's going to be helpful and what's not, what's going to add value to a person's life and what won't. And so I just pulled stuff out that didn't seem to me to be going to add value and tried to find ways that I could really be useful to somebody reading. My job when I write a book is not to show everyone how much I know. It's to say, what's the most useful thing that you need to know about this specific issue? So I tried to put useful stuff in and tried to take stuff out that didn't feel like it was going to be quite so relevant.
So what are you hoping that your readers will take away from the book?
More than anything, what I'd like to see happen is that dads will know how to be more supportive of their wives and partners through the pregnancy, but especially during the labour. I've said this already in the conversation, but I want to emphasise it. When I think about all of the things that you and I have been through, we've been married for 24 years, if I'm getting my maths right, 24 and a half years. The thing that has really overwhelmingly stuck in my mind as incredibly powerful in our relationship is what we went through as our babies were born and the way that I did my very best to support you and help you. And while I am not claiming for a second that I've been perfect at it, I know that they've been meaningful experiences. They've been really transcendent experiences for you and I and for our relationship. And they're memories that I look back on with so much awe and so much gratitude and so much delight when I consider how it felt for us to have that experience. So I want other people to have those experiences. I want the birth of their child or children to be as meaningful for them as it has been for us. And for the partner who's not actually going through the labour to do more than stand there and yawn and look at the phone and wonder how long this is going to go and feel useless. I felt like I really made a contribution, and I want other husbands and partners to have the same experience.
I love that notion because I think back to baby number 1 and just how ill-equipped we both were in the whole process from start to finish, and how helpless you felt because you couldn't do enough to support me, and how frustrated I was because I needed you and I didn't know how to help you help me either.
Yeah.
And then going through that process 3 years later with baby number 2 and
being so equipped with all that knowledge.
So equipped. And having gone through the process ourselves, even though we didn't understand it then, definitely equipped us better. But having the education that we were able to go through made worlds of difference. And as that process continued with each of our children, what I saw was you were my rock. In every sense of the word. I didn't actually see the midwives as being the experts in the room because they were the medical experts, and if something went wrong, I knew that they would be there to help me. But the expert for me, who knew me intimately and knew what I needed and knew how to give me the specific individual and personal support that I needed, was you. And that was just the most beautiful experience. And to think that you're able to share that knowledge with others so that they can have that experience is life-changing.
And that's what I've tried to do. And hopefully I've done it reasonably well, because I feel the same way that you do. And that's why I embraced the opportunity to write this book.
So this book is specifically for men who are literally staring down the barrel of dadhood.
Yeah.
First time.
Well, not necessarily the first time. I mean, I know with what I've written and what we experience with all of the births, if you're about to be a first-time dad, this is going to be immensely helpful, enormously helpful. But I actually think it might be even more helpful if you're about to become a dad for the second or the third time, because you've kind of been through this and you know how useless you felt. Reading the book is going to help you to feel like you've actually got a contribution to make, a meaningful contribution. So I would definitely say this is for anyone who's about to become a dad, whether it's for the first time or second, third, fourth, fifth time. You're going to be so much more supportive and so much better in that labour room if you read this book than if you just keep on doing what you've always done.
What do you know now as a dad that you wished you had have known back when we welcomed our first child into life?
I don't think that you can transfer this knowledge, but just how transformative it is, how much it will change your life, how much these little fingers that are wrapping around your pinky or that tiny little mouth is going to completely melt your heart for the rest of your life. That would be one thing. But the second thing is just what that birth process, if done well, if done in a really connected way, what it can do for a partnered relationship, for a husband and wife. It's extraordinary, and I'm so grateful for it.
So, lucky last question.
Okay.
Do you feel like you achieved what you set out to do with the book?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Like, I'm genuinely excited that the book's coming out. Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies, second Australian edition by me, Dr. Justin Coulson. I was stoked with it. With the timeframes that we had, with the skeleton, the template that we were working with, I don't think that we could have done a much better job. I'm really pleased with it.
So if people are looking to buy the book, where would they get it from?
Well, thanks so much for asking. You'll find it wherever you find your books. Typically, you can go to any bookstore if you can find one of those, or jump online and just Google my name and Dad's Guide to Pregnancy for Dummies, or jump into the show notes of this podcast and you'll find it all there.
Well, I think that's a wrap. Did I do okay?
You just got to do the whole end of the podcast thing and we're out. Well done.
Okay, so I've got to thank Justin Rulon from Bridge Media.
Yeah.
For doing all of our production. He makes us sound amazing.
He does.
So this will sound amazing by the time we're finished, JR. And I've got to thank Craig Bruce. He's our executive producer, and he is just a wealth of knowledge and helps us stay on track, and we really appreciate everything he does. And anyone else?
I think that's probably about it.
If you want to find more information about any of the things that we've talked about today, or on our podcast in general, go to happyfamilies.com.au.
You nailed it.